you guys want to hold this up here, or do you want to go straight from the podium?
We'll go podium.
Okay.
Good morning. We've got a great panel today. I'm going to first introduce and thank our speakers. First up, we're going to have Peter Brady. He's a senior economist with the Investment Company Institute. He's going to talk about annuities, the composition of retirement resources, and his personal favorite form of guaranteed income. Next up, we've got Craig Copeland, senior research associate with EBRI. He'll be talking about the IRA spin-down behaviors among the 60-plus crowd. Then Jeff Houston, Chief Communication Officer with the Indiana Public Retirement System. He'll be talking about updates on their retirement plan, in particular some things they've been doing around stopping annuitizing DC accounts and the expectations around financial education. And then Diana Winalski, Head of 401k Product Management at International Paper, talking about what they're doing to help their participants retire successfully. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter.
All right, thank you, David, and thanks to EBRI for inviting me to talk today. So discussions of retirement income typically start with the assumption, either implicit or explicit, that retirees need more annuity income. So what I want to do in my talk today is review why we think individuals should annuitize their wealth at retirement, assess the extent to which their wealth is already annuitized, and then ask if people do need more annuity income, what's the best way to get it? So the annuity puzzle, that that we believe that retirees should annuitize their wealth, yet few do, dates, the belief that there is one dates back to the 1960s. There's a seminal research paper, and that research paper predicted that provided they didn't want to leave assets to their kids, rational individuals would choose to annuitize all their wealth at retirement. So that result comes from a simple life cycle model, and so here's a simple example of that model to provide some intuition. So suppose there's an individual starts off working at age 22, works to age 67, and has the observed hump-shaped earnings. The question the model tries to answer is, how much would that individual spend in each period of her life? And the answer to that question is, if you're rational, and given the prevailing interest rates that were around when I made this example up many years ago, she would she would spend exactly $51,600 in each period of her life. How would she do that? Well, early on, she'd spend more than her income actually, and she'd take on debt, pay that off. Sometime after age 40, when that's paid off, she starts saving for retirement. At retirement, take all the wealth they have and purchase an actuarially fair inflation-indexed annuity, which will pay a flat inflation-indexed amount the rest of her life. Okay? This created a puzzle because most U.S. households don't buy any annuities, much less annuitize all of their wealth. So there are at least two potential explanations for this puzzle. The typical explanation for it is that individuals, households are behaving irrationally. But the other explanation is the model's not very good. So the existence of the puzzle raises the question, are individuals behaving irrationally, or are economists not very good at predicting what rational people would do? So there are certainly, to some extent, it's at first glance, at least somewhat easy to poke some holes in the model. It's a very simple model. I mean, there's no government, there's no financial sector. Consumption is one unitary good. That's all you can buy. And over the years, many have pointed out some of its shortcomings. For example, typical studies that use the model will assume that individuals can buy an actually fair annuity, and market priced annuities, because of both transaction costs, but also because of adverse selection, are not actuarially fair. Also, typical studies don't take into account other annuitized resources people have, particularly Social Security benefits, usually incorporate very little uncertainty, and are only considering single individuals. So it turns out if you're married and you and your spouse make the following agreement, when one of us dies, the other one gets to keep all the assets, that actually provides nearly as much insurance benefits as a market-priced annuity. Now, so you'd think incorporating these things into the model would change the predictions, because that would kind of make sense. It turns out it doesn't change the predictions, something I would only believe after I went through the math. But a recent paper made me feel much better about the time I wasted on this exercise, because what they show is that the model from the seminal research paper is the results from that model are not just robust, they are astoundingly robust. You can essentially hit the model with a thermonuclear blast, it does not budge. Okay? And they point out what they believe is the source of this robustness, and that is the assumption that individuals know with certainty the probability they will survive in all future years. If you instead assume that people over the course of their life gain information about their own mortality, I mean, ain't that the truth, right? That then the results of the model change radically. For example, they build a model where they start with a basic model, and they make one simple change. They say, over the course of people's lives, they experience health events, and those health events both give them more information about their own individual mortality probability and are costly, either in terms of lost income or out-of-pocket expenses. With that one change, the result that people annuitize all their wealth disappears. And that's even assuming there are no transaction costs, no adverse selection, and no incentive, and people don't want to leave things to their children. As a matter of fact, what they predict is that most U.S. households will not annuitize any of their wealth. Right? So my answer to this question is that I think many economists have got it wrong. And what I find puzzling is not that retirees don't annuitize all their wealth, but that some economists think perhaps they should. So I think a reasonable starting point, a reasonable starting point for discussing retirement income is assume that people want to annuitize some of their wealth, but not all of it. That is, for some people, retirement or income security means having a pot of money that they can access if they need to fix the transmission, buy a new refrigerator, or get sick. And once we agree that people want to annuitize some but not all their resources, then the next step is to look at what they have and assess to what extent is it already annuitized. And when you do that, what you see is that the need for additional annuity income is going to differ dramatically across households. Okay. So retirees rely on a number of resources. The primary resource is Social Security. Social Security pays benefits in the form of an inflation-indexed annuity. Many households also own their own home, and a home is an important retirement resource. Not because people sell their homes and use the proceeds to buy groceries, it's just that they live in their homes. And in that sense, it's a form of annuitized wealth because compared to renting, they don't need to generate as much monthly income. In addition, most working households hit retirement with at least something from employer plans and IRAs. And traditional defined benefit plans often pay benefits in the form of an annuity. So the next few slides I'm going to look at in more detail at these resources. So what this slide shows is projected Social Security benefits for someone born in the 60s. And what this shows is that after taxes, the average worker, and these are per worker, not per household, is expected to get about $23,000 of benefits in today's dollars if they claim at age 67, which will be their full benefit age. But the average does not tell the whole story. Like a traditional pension, the more you earn, the more Social Security benefits you get. Right? And so it ranges quite a bit from about $13,000 per worker if you're in the bottom earning 20% of households to about $32,000 if you're in the top 20% of earning, top earning 20%. Probably what's more important for our discussion today is the replacement rate. So what this shows is replacement Social Security benefits as a percentage of your inflation-indexed average earnings. All right? And again, this is for the same cohort, born in the 60s. On average, Social Security benefits for people claiming age 67 are projected to replace 65% of average inflation-indexed earnings. But again, the average doesn't tell the whole story. What's unique about Social Security is that unlike a regular pension, the replacement rate is much higher for lower income people. It replaces much higher share of earnings. So it's 98% for the lowest earning 20%, goes down to about 39% for the highest earning. In addition to Social Security, most working households have, by the time they reach retirement, accumulated something in a defined contribution plan or IRA, the light blue, a defined benefit, which is the dark blue on the bottom, or both, which is the medium blue in the middle. Okay? Again, the average over everybody does not tell the whole story. If you look at the differences by rank households by income, Nearly everyone in the top 3 quintiles, the top 60%, have these resources, fewer in the bottom 2 quintiles. This is fully consistent with the design of Social Security we just saw. Social Security is designed to be the primary resource for lower income households. Higher income households will need to supplement Social Security to maintain their standard of living. Now, if we put it all together, I'm sorry, one more thing. The same pattern that we saw in ownership is also reflected in the amount people have. So if you look at people who have retirement assets, the median amount is $120,000, and the average amount is about $370,000. But again, that's going to vary radically depending on where you are in the income distribution. And this is fully consistent with the Social Security. But I think this is an important picture to keep in mind when we discuss annuitization, because this probably represents a pretty good upper bound estimate of what the pool of resources available to annuitize are. Okay. So now we put it all together, and we look at what this chart shows is results of a study that looked at a comprehensive measure of wealth for people nearing retirement. It includes the normal measures of wealth, but also includes the value of future Social Security benefits and the value of future defined benefit benefits. As we already mentioned, there are 3 assets that are already effectively annuitized, 3 parts of wealth: Social Security, the green, your home equity, the purple, and defined benefit plans, which are the blue. All right, so the discussion of retirement income and what should we do about retirement income is really about what should we do with the remainder of assets, DC plans, IRAs, and things held outside of retirement accounts. What percentage of those assets should we also annuitize? So when I look at this, I don't see a picture of people who are under annuitized. I don't see an annuity puzzle. To me, many individuals, particularly lower income individuals, already have most of their wealth annuitized. Okay. Higher income individuals may need to annuitize more wealth, and this may increase over time as DC plans become more important. Okay. But the next question is, for those households that do need more annuity income, what's the best way to purchase that annuity income? And as I mentioned before, what this shows is for individuals born in the 60s who claim at age 67, their projected benefits are about $23,000 in today's dollars. But depending on when they claim, that'll change quite a bit. And these adjustments are designed to be actuarially fair. Okay? The best way to get more annuity income is to delay claiming Social Security. Why do I say that? Well, the benefit adjustments are designed to be actuarially fair. And market price annuities are not actuarially fair. Some of that's because of transaction costs, but a whole lot of that is adverse selection. That is, they don't pay off, they estimate to pay about 80, 85 cents for the average person because the average annuitant lives a lot longer than the average person. Okay? But it turns out it's even better than that. These adjustments were designed when interest rates were higher and people didn't live as long. So it's actually better than actuarially fair at the moment. So I want to make 2 notes about this. One is that delaying claiming Social Security does not mean you have to keep working. Okay? Well, all this means is you delay claiming, take the money you would have used to buy a private market annuity, live off of that. When it's exhausted, then you claim. Okay, so you don't have, this doesn't mean you have to work longer. The other thing is that not everyone should wait till age 70 to claim Social Security benefits. Right? It doesn't mean you should delay as long as possible. It just means anyone who buys a private market annuity should delay as long as possible. Okay. All right. So to sum up, my view is that the retirees' need for regular income represents a market opportunity, but not a public policy concern. Okay. Most Americans are already highly annuitized, and all but very high income households can get all the annuity they need simply by delaying claiming. However, just because it's not a public policy issue doesn't mean there's not a market for these things. And I think it's a market opportunity both for financial firms to create products that generate regular income and for employers who want to design a compensation package that can attract really high quality workers. So I do think it's a market opportunity. I just don't think it's a public policy concern.
Thank you. I'm going to look at what people are actually doing with their IRA. Are those balances changing? are they, and how fast they're going down, or are they preserving them as they go throughout retirement years? This is going to be part of a much broader study that's going to be coming out in early next year from EBRI, and it uses our IRA database, which is something that we started in 2010, and we are able to link people over time so we can actually follow people as they go through the retirement years. And in particular, we're going to be focusing on people 60 and older in this particular study. The one thing that we can see is in 2016, we had a significant number of accounts, 24 million, that belong to 19.1 million individuals, because we're able to link up those that have more than one account, and it represented about $2.36 trillion. I compared our database to what is in the IRS tabs that show taxpayers, and kind of you can see these numbers that they are very similar across both the IRS tabs and what is in our database. So this is a very good representation of what is going on in the IRA market. A couple of quick stats here. We're about 25 to 30% of the assets and about 30% of the individuals that own a IRA in this database. So this is kind of showing what the capability of what we're going on this database, and can kind of look at what people are doing over time, which really kind of gets into what's happening with the dollars over time. Are people preserving these accounts? Are they drawing them down too fast? Or are they closing them? And that's all the important things that could happen for in the IRAs. So these are some of the variables that we can look at, and that'll be more explored in the study. I'll go through a couple of these demographic examples as we go through this presentation. So again, getting back to the goals of this presentation, I want to see what is happening. How are the balances changing? I'm going to be starting in 2012 in this particular study, and going to see what has happened to the balance in 2015. Has it increased, decreased, or has the account gone to zero, or has it been closed in that amount of time? So we can kind of see, are these people maintaining these IRAs? And the big question is, because this is where most of the employer money at retirement is ending up. It's not staying in the DC plan. It's ending up in the IRA. So this is kind of the action of where decumulation is happening in many cases for those that have built up some assets. So we're going to be calculating the percentage differences. I'm only looking at people 60 and older, so we're kind of focusing in on the retirement. I will show one slide on what people are actually doing when they reach the age that they have to take out a distribution. You know, RMD age 71 or older, 70 and a half. I have whole years here, so we're going to use 71. And again, I'm going to be focusing on traditional IRAs, so we're not contaminating what is being taken out from a Roth IRA when it doesn't have to be taken out. And lastly, I'm going to compare these results to some results that we had previously done from HRS, from a study from Sudipto Banerjee, to kind of look at how these results correlate. Because one thing that we know, just because the money is coming out of the IRA, it doesn't necessarily mean it's being spent. It's just coming out of the IRA. Whereas the HRS study is looking at total assets, so you can kind of see a loose comparison of how those kind of correlate, or how they look illustratively compared to those, what's going on in the IRA versus the total asset changes that is shown in the health and retirement study. So that is what we're going to be looking at today to go forward. First of all, just what's happened from these accounts for those 60 and older, broken out by age. You can see that over 80% of the accounts after 3 years are still there. We have about 20% that either go to zero or closed for most age groups until you get out to the 85 and older. And there's a good chance that there is a correlation between account being closed and death after 85 plus. So that's kind of really what could be potentially driving that, but you would expect that. But still, even 80% all the way up to 85 is still being preserved at some sense in that account going forward from 12 to the end of 15. So we still see quite a bit of money as being preserved, at least some. Now, to look at the differences, we break out whether the balance is increased or decreased. And so the top bracket is the decreases, the top blues are the decreases, the bottom lighter blues are the ones that are actually at least staying the same, if not increasing. So you can still see that even when you get out to the 75 and 84 age group, 40% of the accounts have increased in their balances from 2012 to 2015. And again, just because people are having to take withdrawals doesn't necessarily mean that the balance is going down. Particularly in a period where the stock market has been good, we can still see that what is being required to take out is less than what people are getting in returns. We do see that it does go up in age is more likelihood because, again, people are required to take out more as you get older. And so we could see that it goes down to, you get 85 plus, there's still 23% of the accounts are being stay the same or increasing, but 3/4 are decreasing. But at the younger ages, it's well over 65% for 60, 35% are going down. So remember, this does include those that go to zeros. So some of those are because it's closed, some of that's because the balance is going down. But still, we see the majority of the accounts, regardless of majority of accounts overall, pretty much until you get over 75, a majority of the accounts are increasing during this 3-year period, even though in some of these ages are during required withdrawal periods. The next one, we look at account balances. What's interesting is that really there is much more closure or going to zero for small accounts. It's not surprising. Small accounts are most likely going to be cashed out because those people are most likely going to need that money. There's not as much money to preserve. But when you get out to the really large accounts, you see that we're almost getting to 90% of those accounts are still staying there. So they're still being preserved in a way that they go out. Even going down to 75,000, we're well over 80 in these accounts. But what's really interesting is that the balance really doesn't have an effect on whether the account has gone down or gone up. It's almost a straight line all the way across, regardless of the account balance size, of the percentage of accounts that have balances that have gone up during this period versus those that have gone to zero or decreased over this period. So really there isn't much correlation with action of increase of balances by the size of the balance. That seems to be pretty much the same regardless of the balance. What's different, though, was the age. There is some age effect. Excuse me. There was some age effect. Obviously, as they get older, they're going to be pulling out more and they're going to be going down. But the balance itself doesn't seem to be as big a factor on whether the account balances are going up or going down. And the one thing that we find at is what we look at what people are actually withdrawing for those accounts that for people that make it to 71. What are they doing? This one, I'm actually looking at an entire 6-year period. I'm looking at from those 2010 to 2016 to see what their withdrawal rates are. Basically, I'm going to average it, do a geometric average over that period to see what their withdrawal rates were for those years. We could see that if you really look from the 25th percentile of all the individuals in each of these age groups that we looked at, what their withdrawal rates, when you go from 25 to 75%, there's only a 2 percentage point difference. In most cases, it does go up with age, as you would expect. Their RMD goes up, so you would expect that the average amount that they're taking each year is going up. But it's still pretty consistent, even from the 25th all the way up to the 70th percentile, on the average amount of taking out. And you can see at the median, it's basically 4, 5, or 6%. For the middle age groups from the 71 to 84, it really doesn't bounce up to well above kind of the 4% rule or kind of what the RMD is until you get to the 85 plus. And that's where you're getting the really old people that have to take an RMD that would be much more than this area. So you can see that once they reach 71, when you look at the middle 50%, and certainly the lowest 25% has to be even lower, they're really not taking out at a rate that these accounts are going to be withdrawn completely by the time they retire, by the die. So there is good evidence here that people are maintaining these accounts once they reach this age, and they're following what we can see in many cases. They're actually only taking out what the required minimum distribution is. So they are essentially going to have money to live through their death if they get this, certainly when they get this far. The one thing I talked to you, I want to do a loose comparison of comparing it because, as I said, the IRA doesn't mean they're spending it when they're withdrawing it. HRS looks at total assets. This is kind of a loose comparison of what's going on here, but there's a couple things. The HRS is when they stop working. I'm doing from everyone from age 65 and older to compare. I'm looking at it the 3 years. The HRS study did a much longer period. I'm only looking at it for the first 3 to 4 year cycle because it's every 2 years. I'm using the 2012 to 2015 sample, and I include rollovers just to see. So when you compare it, so carefully for we go across the x-axis, we have 3 different groupings of the account balance size when they retire for HRS versus when we start this in 2012. We could see that there's not much difference because we go up, people have less than 20%, so that would be people at 0, that's the bottom bar, all the way up to gradations where we get to 100% or more at the top. And we could see that from the IRA database, which is the left of each of these groups of borrowings, we can see that 50% are 100% or more, regardless of the account balance. We could kind of see that it's kind of similar to what the changes in the total assets are from the HRS. There's a little bit of difference for the small account balances. They're more likely to go to 0 or to be less than 100% as opposed to there's a little bit more, it'd be 100% or more from the IRA database. But again, there's some clear correlation after the first 3 or 4 years of what's going in the IRA looks to be similar to what's going on in the HRS study of overall assets. So it kind of gives us that this is potentially a good indicator of what's happening to overall assets of what's going on. So that is where I want to stop and hand it over to Jeff.
So what I'll have for you today is maybe a bit more of a case study. There's a little bit of research in here, but there's some storytelling too. So I'll tell you the story about some transitions that came with the Indiana public retirement system, particularly in how annuities were handled, and particularly annuities with members' defined contribution accounts. I'll give you a little bit of at-a-glance information, but I'm going to go pretty quickly through this because it just gives you an idea of what the plan is. $34.2 billion plan, about 467,000 members, representing 1,200 employers, and so that's an important thing to remember too, is that we're not a one-employer plan. We've got 8 defined benefit plans and 3 defined contribution plans, so we've got a lot of things going on. The hybrid plans that we have are plans that have a defined benefit component and then what used to be known as an annuity savings account, which we now call defined contribution accounts, that were kind of a sidecar to that plan, that 3% of an individual's wages had to go into that DC account. It's not a cash balance plan. Members of both plans participate in Social Security, so that's another question we get sometimes is, are your participants your members? And by the way, you'll hear me use those words member and participant interchangeably. We call them members. Most of you call them participants, so I'll switch back and forth on you. You'll see here our defined contribution only plans. We've got 2 relatively new ones, one that was rolled out for state of Indiana employees and the other rolled out for what we call local government or political subdivisions, and then a long-standing legislators plan. So you've got distribution options, obviously, for a defined benefit plan that as you retire, you have to decide, am I going to take early retirement, in which case I'm going to have a reduced benefit, and what kind of payment options do I want? Do I want to have just payment for me in my lifetime, or do I want to leave something so that my spouse or somebody can get some payments afterwards? So not particularly uncommon there. But then members have always had to, particularly with the PERF and TURF funds, PERF being the Public Employees Retirement Fund and TURF being the Teachers Retirement Fund, which are our 2 largest, members had to decide, what am I going to do with that money in the defined contribution account? The annuity savings account is what we used to call it. And again, those typical types of things you can do. You can leave it with us and make a decision later. You can roll that money over. You can take a lump sum distribution and have a party. Hopefully you don't do that, but you could. And I suspect some of our members have over the years. Or you can annuitize that. Now, the catch with the annuities is this. And when I talk about annuities here, I'm talking about annuities with those defined contribution annuity savings accounts. Obviously, the monthly defined benefit plans are not what I'm talking about in terms of payments now. We traditionally, we did the annuities in-house. We didn't have anybody else do them. We did them. And So we had an assumed rate of return on that money that was annuitized with us, and more than 50% of our members annuitized through the Indiana Public Retirement System. Larger chunks took distributions. Not many at that time would choose to annuitize with an outside provider, and that'll become a little bit more clear as I describe this. But our assumed rate of return for that money people annuitize with us actually turned out to be greater than what we were assuming the rate of return was going to be for the investments as a whole for the Indiana Public Retirement System. So you can imagine there's a bit of a gap there in terms of the assumptions that create potential problems for the system. As our board looked at this, they said, you know what? Number one, we're paying what amounts to something significantly ahead of market rate on our annuities. That's one of the reasons why 50% of our members would annuitize with us, because if they talked to their brother-in-law who sold annuities, he said, I can't touch that. But they said, our board looked at it and said, do we want to be taking that risk on internally? That's additional financial risk. And so what they decided they wanted to do was provide DC account annuities, but do it through an outside provider, not through the Indiana Public Retirement System. And as always, you can still go to again, your brother-in-law or anybody else who can provide those for you. Now, that resulted in a little bit of resistance among our members, and they were, I think, justifiably concerned, hey, there's changes going here, and whenever you're going to announce perceived changes to benefits or how you're going to do things, changes are things that concern people. Suddenly people start paying attention who maybe haven't been paying attention to their benefits or even their pension system for years. So the Indiana General Assembly got involved and said, hey, rather than going very quickly into market rate, let's give you a glide path and say, okay, you know, you can take a rate down to 5.75% in a time period, make it 4.5% or market rate, and then after December 31st, 2016, you can then say, okay, we're going to take this into the market. So what that resulted in, and getting back to that comment, it's not what you know, it's what you think you know that can very often drive decisions. We had what we called the retirement tsunami in 2014, and that was a lot of folks who said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and retire and annuitize through you guys because, number one, I can annuitize through you and I want to, and number two, because the rate's higher. Now, the unfortunate thing is, if you looked at many of those individuals who said, I'm going to lock in a higher rate, you're saying, okay, you're giving up a job that pays $65,000, $70,000 a year to lock in an extra, I don't know, $10 a month. So it's, again, it's not what you know, it's what you think you know that very often drives decisions. And we work very hard to educate people, but again, we can educate, but we don't advise. Now, I think that also what we ran into is a lot of people who said, okay, you're making these changes. I've worked very long in this job in public service. I've worked very long in the classroom. And you know what? I've been ready to go for a few years, and this is just giving me the incentive to say I'm going to go ahead and step out of the workforce. So where were we then? Where did that take us? MetLife was selected and contracted with us as our preferred annuity provider with an agreement in 2017, so we were in compliance with the law. And it went live just this year. Prior to 2014, like I said, about 50% of the folks annuitized. In the calendar year of 2017 at 37%, and then year to date we've been running about 15%. And so how do you explain some of that? I think part of that is kind of a behavioral science explanation. If you look at that 50%, sure, the rates were higher, but how many of our members do you think were even shopping for another rate someplace? Mostly they weren't. It was a very simple, easy process, and that is we're taking you through, we're counseling you on retirement and how to get your money out of the plan, your defined benefit. And oh, by the way, what do you want to do with your annuity savings account or your defined contribution account? You'd like to annuitize? Okay, that's easy. We do that in the same form. There's no problem with it. And so I think that there was very, very little friction for somebody in 2013 to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and annuitize with you with my defined contribution account at the same time I do my defined benefit. And by the way, we'll even fold in those checks together so it's one payment. So then we had the changes. I think then I know from individuals I know who are out in the market saying I'm selling annuities to Indiana public school teachers, things like that. that it became market competitive when we began to go to more of a market rate. And now that we're fully into this in 2018, and this could change, we're seeing, like I said, about 15%, but I'm going to say 15% annuitized through us and through MetLife. I don't have numbers that say, okay, how many people chose to annuitize through somebody else. So I think the total number of people who annuitize is somewhat higher, but I think you're seeing market forces at work, but I also think you're seeing a little bit of behavioral science, and that there's a bit more friction to make any annuity decision with us now, which I think also makes people sometimes stop and pay attention and make a more thoughtful decision. So what else has gone on with the Indiana public retirement system that this may impact? So you put the annuity issue aside for a minute. You say, well, those folks had defined benefit accounts, so that annuity savings account was just a little bit extra. So if I worked 30 years for the state of Indiana, I might replace about a third of my income with a defined benefit plan and another piece of income with the defined contribution if I chose to annuitize it. But the state of Indiana and our pension systems are in generally good, solid shape. The employers in the General Assembly have typically paid the required contributions to keep it healthy, which is a good thing. But they're also looking ahead and they're saying, do we need to be moving more into the defined contribution world along with the rest of the nation? So in 2013, we rolled out a retirement savings plan, a defined contribution plan that we called the My Choice Plan. That's for state employees. State employees hire in, they get a choice then. When I'm a new hire, do I want to go with the traditional defined benefit plan, which, by the way, has 10-year vesting, or do I want to hire in with a defined contribution plan that has 5-year vesting in increments? And then later on, 2016, My Choice Retirement Savings Plan for local government, I mentioned that. And sometime next year, again, that same type of plan will be rolled out for school teachers, so that a new teacher is going to have that choice of, okay, do I want to elect for a defined contribution plan, or do I want to elect for the defined benefit plan? We do see that as people are making these choices, the default choice for the state of Indiana, for instance, is the defined benefit plan. So if you don't make a choice, you get defaulted in defined benefit. But the folks who are making the choice to say, yes, I want the defined contribution plan, tend to be two groups. Number one, younger folks who say, I'm not sure I want to spend 10 years to get vested in government. I may work for a few years and move on, and I want to have that portability. And the other group are second career people who are coming in maybe in their 50s. They've already earned a retirement benefit or have retirement accounts elsewhere, and they say, you know what, I want to work maybe 5 years in state government, and I don't want to worry about 10-year vesting. So what we've had to ask ourselves then is, how are these questions impacting our members? And this is where our research comes in. We've got a pretty strong research arm in our group that does both quantitative and qualitative research, and spends a lot of time saying, let's get close to the members and let's understand what they want and need. So we asked them, what do you expect to do with your defined contribution funds when you retire? What do you want from INPRS? Do you need help from us? Or do you think that it's none of our business what you are doing with your money or any education? And then how should we respond? We also had to ask ourselves the question, do those folks in our defined contribution plans have different needs from the defined benefit? It would seem on its face that they do. We did ask members then, what do you expect from us? What do you want from us as this world is changing? And we said, who is responsible for providing your retirement financial education? And our members or our participants, and I think this is in a way kind of the good news. They say, if it's to be, it's up to me. They're saying, I am responsible for educating and educating myself. Now, that again gets back to that seeking of financial information as you need it. But secondly, then they look to us, INPRS. On the third on the list, they look to their employers, private financial counselors, friends, and family. And I will tell you that it is different with the teacher's plan versus the public employees plan. Teachers are much more likely in our organization, the people we serve, to have a financial advisor. Public employees who are maybe making $30,000 to $40,000 at retirement are not high net worth individuals and are far less likely to have a financial advisor. So that's something we have to take into account also. But one of the questions our board asked is, if we're going to put our nose into retirement education at all, do our employers even want us to do that? Or would they rather we just say, that's not our mission, our employers want to do it? And I know traditionally folks have worked through employers to get this education to people. but that's not always been the way it's worked with our group of employers. So we asked our employers, what do you expect? Who is supposed to provide that education to your employees? And overwhelmingly they said, well, you are. Why are you asking me? And then they said, oh, and by the way, our employee is responsible for this. They have to be responsible for themselves too. And then their financial counselor, and by the way, then the employer rated themselves more or less low on that list, not extremely low, and 2/3 said that they're still responsible for it, but they are looking to us. Now, you have to understand that we've got 1,200 employers, and some of them are very, very large employers, but the majority are relatively small employers. And if you're a school corporation, like the school where I grew up, where there was 120 people in my graduating class, your office staff is in a small house across from the old high school, and the superintendent's office is a living room, and the clerk's office is one of the bedrooms. They don't have a lot of people to provide retirement financial education, so they do look to us to do that. So that's one of the things on our list, and then we've been asking the same questions this group has been asking about engagement and education and how they link together. We participate with a group of public pension systems that together measure a form of engagement, and this is a project, to give due credit, that is something that CalSTRS has brought life to, and it's been a very interesting process for us. So what did we learn? We learned that first off, members are looking to us for help on this as we change, as the world changes. It's not just annuitization, but everything it takes to have an income in retirement. Our employers look to us. Our members look to us. They want us to do something. We do believe that engagement is going to be very important, measuring it and getting smarter about measuring it, and doing more than just saying, here's an average score, but understanding driver analysis and what actually drives behavior is going to be very important to us, though our toe is just in the water in that regard. But we are, at this point, putting our toe in the water in terms of retirement financial education. We're not highly sophisticated at it, but we're putting our toe in the water, talking to our board about some small pilot programs that won't have a great deal of expense, but will have us engaging our members more than just saying we're processing payments here. And I think, there we go. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Today I'm going to share with you what we have done at International Paper to address retirement income needs of our participants. So a little background on International Paper. We are one of the largest leading producers of fiber-based packaging, pulp, and paper. Packaging products that protect, think of Amazon and the packages that you get in the mail. If you turn over the bottom of the box, it's typically an International Paper box. Pulp for diapers, think Pampers or Depends, and certainly papers that facilitate education and communication. IP is headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, and we have approximately 52,000 active employees worldwide and strategically located in more than 24 countries, serving customers around the globe. I am part of a team of 7 people. We're located in Stamford, Connecticut, and we manage approximately $15 billion of retirement capital for our participants. Our goal at International Paper is really to keep participants in the plan. We want to keep our participants under the fiduciary umbrella for as long as possible. A little background on International Paper and the retirement vehicles that we offer our participants. We have a pension fund that it will be freezing at the end of this year for our salaried employees. We have a savings plan, which is approximately $5.8 billion with nearly 49,000 participants. Our savings plan offers many features attractive to all types of employees, a new hire, mid-career, near retirement, and in retirement. We really do not discriminate about the features that we offer in our plan. We have a full suite of distribution options. We allow our participants to take installment payouts, partial lump sum payouts. They can take a full rollover IRA. They can simply just take their required minimum distributions. We also have a brokerage window offering thousands of investment choices for the vocal minority. We have online investment advice at no additional cost through financial engines, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we have unique investment options like our stable value fund that one cannot get outside of a 401k plan. We also offer our employees access to post-employment loans, which is very unique. We believe that it's their money. We should allow them to take a loan against their account. In early 2008, we improved our spend down program that we launched in 2013. We now have a full range of retiree-focused savings plan features that encourage our participants to stay in the plan as long as they can, even after they retire. As I said earlier, we believe it's important for our employees to stay under the fiduciary umbrella to have their best interests at heart. This is a slide that illustrates the demographics of the international paper population in the savings plan. You can see that we have quite a few of our participants that are either eligible for retirement or in retirement or considering retirement. And that is approximately 19,000 people, which makes up about 38% of the entire participants in the plan, or $3.4 billion out of the $5.8 billion, which is about 59% of our plan assets. So those are people that are eligible or looking to retirement. So this is really a call to action for us at International Paper to develop a retirement income program for our participants. We really wanted to create a paycheck for life, and as we heard last night over dinner, every individual has different needs. They may be married, they may not be, they may have healthcare issues, they may not have healthcare issues, they may have many children, few children. They all have different needs, very heterogeneous, and everybody has different sources of retirement income. Certainly we have the pillar of Social Security. Some may be lucky enough to have a pension benefit. You may have a spouse that has an IRA or a 401k plan. You certainly have the RMD for those that have an IRA or a 401k plan that can make part of that paycheck for life. And then annuities can also play a role in the paycheck for life. We seek to provide our participants with retirement income security. We launched our managed accounts program in 2013. That was launched for people that are age 55 and older. Again, that group of individuals that need extra help in managing their assets. And then on January 1st of this year, we improved that spend down program, and we launched a long bond option. We did a lot of modeling with our partners at Financial Engines, and we recognized that adding a long bond feature to the managed account program could increase payouts for those individuals and payout status by approximately 10%. We also now offer an out-of-plan annuity option through the Healer Income Solutions platform. That is a company benefit. It's outside of the plan, but people do have access to that. It's a competitive bidding program where people can go out and purchase an immediate annuity or a deferred annuity. We believe that improving the spend-down program is a good way to address employees' retirement concerns as we shift, International Paper in particular, but also around the country as we shift from pension only to 401k plan only to accumulation assets. And International Paper has been an innovator in retirement savings plan design, and we are always looking at new and innovative ways to improve the outcome for our participants. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Managed Accounts program, we work with Empower, who is our record keeper, and they have on the back end, they have Financial Engines Managed Accounts. And it is a program whereby a participant, they talk to a registered investment advisor on the phone, and they basically relinquish control over the management of their assets to this registered investment advisor. The assets stay in the plan, but it's somebody that is making the asset allocation decisions for them. It's also an interactive discussion with the registered investment advisor. And we've seen, and we all know, that those people that are involved in managed accounts, they're typically a more engaged investor. We look at the population that are 55 and older that are not involved in the program versus those that are in the program. They have a higher average savings rate, and they also have higher average balances in their 401k plan. So this is offered to our population of 55 and older. And every year we do an annual campaign to this cohort of individuals in the plan, and it's offered to both terminated and active employees. And we hope to get more engagement and involvement in the program every year. So a long bond fund, some may ask, why are you adding this to the plan, especially in an environment where you have rising interest rates? And we have seen some struggling performance in long bond. But as with pension plans, the longer duration fixed income can play a very important role in asset liability matching. So we believe that that long bond fund within the context of a managed account program will work over time. It's a large liquid asset class that offers participant diversification benefits and drawdown of equities. And certainly the Healer Income Solutions product that we now offer, the out-of-plan program, where we believe is going to help our participants going forward as they choose to either purchase an immediate annuity or a deferred annuity. Our participants can actually call any of the registered representatives in the 50 states at Hewler to talk through their retirement income needs. And it's a consultative process with the Hewler team. So that is what we have done at International Paper to address the retirement income needs of our participants. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have as David pushes them out to the group. Thank you.
So, I have this long list of questions, but we're kind of low on time, so I'll let you all go first. Any questions at all for the panelists?
Yes, for Diana, how have you seen uptake of your various options? Have you seen participants going to Hewler and annuitizing, or have you seen uptake? Like, what's some of the results that you're getting?
Sure. So in our managed accounts program, which is for those, sorry about that. In our managed accounts program, we have about $250 million in the program out of that $3.8 billion that I talked about earlier. The $3.4 billion. So it's about 6% of the eligible assets, and we have about 1,100 participants in the managed account program. And that divided by the 19,000 I referred to earlier, again, is about 6%. So it's 6% in terms of count and in assets. This last year, we did an annual campaign. We do it every year, and we had the highest uptake ever in the program. So it may be a function of the aging demographics. It may be a function of the freezing of the salary pension plan at the end of the year. With respect to the other program that we offer is the Hewler Income Solutions program. That's just been in place for nearly a year. We did a soft launch. It is the way that we discuss this with our participants. It's communicated as an out-of-plan benefit, and it's akin to supplemental life insurance, or we have a program called Best Doctors. It's something that really is emanating out of the Human Resources Department. And with the soft launch, when one purchases an annuity, it's a complicated decision. It's an irrevocable decision. And normally, it takes a period of time before one actually purchases an annuity. And Kelly Hewler can attest to this. I know that we have received about 150 phone calls from International Paper and people that have called the Hewler Center. And, it's an educational process. They'll probably ask a lot of questions initially. They'll get a quote or they can go in and play around on this retirement income calculator. So it doesn't trouble me that we don't have any purchases of annuities yet. I think it really is an educational process.
Yeah, maybe more on that point, but to Jeff, I was interested in those take-up rates on annuities. First of all, the amount, it came down, which was interesting, but still at 15%, that is much higher than I think most people in the industry see. So I guess, you talked a little bit about how you embed it into your communications or education. I guess maybe a little bit more about, the take-up rates of the annuity purchases.
So shout out to my colleague Derek Benson, by the way, who leads our retirement financial education team. And his team is out in the field year-round doing hundreds of workshops and meeting with thousands of members in one-on-one counseling appointments. And again, we educate, we don't advise, but we do at that time call it just-in-time education, talk to folks about what do you need to accomplish with what you have available to you in retirement, and ask them those questions and help them understand what decisions they want to make. And I think that we are tending very much, particularly with our public employees, dealing with folks who were not ever high-income people anyway. And I think that a number of them conclude that they like the idea of at least taking a portion of their defined contribution account and giving it some, turning it into a benefit for life. And it's been, I think a benefit for life has been kind of the tradition with that plan for the DC money. And I think Hoosiers are kind of a naturally conservative bunch. So for a lot of people, it seems to be a good choice for them.
Hi, quick question for Peter. I noticed that you looked at a 60s cohort, born in the 60s.
That was the replacement rate I chose from CBO's numbers. Yeah.
Right, but the group had about a 20% private DB in there.
That was a different study. So that was I think people aged 55 to 61 in 2010. It was a different study. It's from the HRS, the data set that Craig was discussing.
But do you think that a younger cohort would be less over-annuitized given the disappearance of private DB?
Yeah, so what I said is that as DC's grown in importance, it's likely that more people will desire these things. At the low end, it's going to be hard for them to get much lower, right? I mean, a lot of it's Social Security. Now, not all DB is going away, at least not yet, in that some of this money is from federal pensions and state and local pensions, which as of yet are still, accruing benefits in DBs. I do think, I'm not sure what you're seeing today is also, I think it's very important what's going to happen to DB. So a lot of times we look at 401ks or IRAs. A lot of this, when they were first introduced, were supplemental to DB plans. So a lot of these people do have Social Security and have DBs and have a 401k. It's particularly not surprising to me that they may not want to annuitize it. One group that is often pointed to as high annuitization rates is people who participate in TIA-CREF. Now, to some extent, people say it's a culture, it's what's been offered, or so forth, which may be. The other thing they are is that college professors are essentially the first high-income group that had DC only, right? Because college professors move from university to university. So most universities, the janitors had a DB and the professors had a DC. So one other thing that is unique about them is they are, for a very long period of time, they had high-paid people who are not getting a very high replacement rate from Social Security and have DC. So I'm not saying that is my prediction of what will happen, but that it's possible.
Full disclosure, I am from TIA, so. But no, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. But
as Sarah will say, I say the same thing to everybody because I have no idea who I'm talking to.
No, of course. But I mean, but it will be interesting to see, obviously, because I think that as we see, I mean, our participants are certainly an example of how the system can work, right, without that kind of backstop. But we've been doing it for 100 years. I think that our concern is that as there's a widening gap between people who no longer have these defined benefit plans and what's going to happen in the future to those younger generations. But I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
More time for questions?
Yeah. One more question.
Okay. Great. So my question is for Craig. So Craig, your data made a really compelling case that a lot of people have very substantial assets laid into retirement. But going forward, I think, there's some forces that are going to be, I think, a headwind to that. Social Security is going down due to the claiming age getting pushed out. Capital market expectations are lower. People are living longer. So are we going to be tracking that data into the future to see if those forces kind of change the way people are spending down in retirement?
I don't necessarily think I said they had substantial wealth there. They were maintaining what they had created. And I do think that is going to be a different age. If they don't have the Social Security, if something, benefits are cut, then they're probably going to have to take more money out faster to maintain their lifestyle. Certainly, if they have DB plans, that certainly is a factor going away that they may have to take out more. So certainly we want to keep going that there could be different generation difference of what we're seeing now may not be reflective of what's going to happen for people that are retiring 10, 15, and certainly 20 years later.
One more question.
So this is a comment in response to some of the discussion around volume and utilization. And I told Diana I would absolutely stand up and make sure that I gave some of the input outside of just their program. As they called it a soft launch, they've done none of the communications that we're talking about doing in 2019. And some of the data that, and Jeff, I think your system really shows this, when you engage with participants, you talked about engagement. We've had the opportunity to have engagement with certain populations, and we can take a plan from zero annuitization to very meaningful utilization and purchasing of annuities. But more importantly, it's also the education that Diana is talking about. It's not just whether someone converts to an annuity, it's whether or not they have the right information to make an informed decision, and their annuities could range anywhere from a very small portion of their resources to a more meaningful portion. But I think the key thing is we see hundreds, from a plan that we actually engage with, we see millions of dollars in purchases, we see people actively engaging with the system, but you have to have that level of commitment and engagement. And I also think the other thing I would say for this whole audience is everyone needs to be real about the forces that oppose annuitization and the biases that are built into the system relative to service providers not wanting annuitization to occur. So remember who controls the participant experience, and I think that's evidence from the data that you provided, Jeff. When you control the participant experience, it's like Walmart with their app. When they can go directly to their participants to solve a need and nobody's intervening, it's amazing what can get done.
All right, well, let's thank our participants, and we're going to take a break.